in mindset. Here's your host, Dr. Paul Miller.
What's up, everybody? We're on another episode from the Gutter to Greatness. And again, as always, bringing you greatness today. My coach is better than yours. We got Coach on here. Coach Murray Garvin will be on here talking about his Gutter to Greatness story, talking about where he came from, where he started at, and where he's going. Also, this brother happens to be a member of one of the most illustrious organizations in the world, the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. We're not going to haze this brother too much today. We're going to get right into it. We're going to ask him first, you're going to the clave, that for those of you who don't know who are listening, Omega Psi Phi, every other year we have our international Grand Conclave, and that's a conference where all the brothers get together and get to fellowship, do some business, and probably act a little bit of the fool as well. So Brother Garvin, are you going to be attending the clave, or are you not making it?
No, I can't make it this year, Paul, due to the fact it's falling on my wedding anniversary, and I'm actually flying out in the morning. My entire family, we're going to Punta Cana for days and taking the whole family over. So we're going to celebrate our 26th wedding anniversary and my youngest daughter's 18th birthday.
So, and when I was going through my process, you would always be taught that it came God, family, then fraternity. So you have to respect that you're going to go with your family. I'm not able to make it either. I actually have the National Charter School Convention for work, and I have to attend this. So I'll be attending the conference for work this week, which happens to be around the same time, or I would have loved to attend Florida and chop it up with some of the bros. But so I'll be with the bros, good bros in spirit. But I will, I do have work that has to go on. So brother Garvin, tell the world, tell the Gutter to Greatness audience, what do you do currently, and why should anybody care?
Well, what I do currently, man, is really it's a microcosm of how I've lived my life and the things that I've experienced and gone through. I currently serve as a diversity specialist for Fayette County Public Schools here in Lexington, Kentucky. And I'm also a basketball coach at a local high school here. I'm the head basketball coach at Frederick Douglass High School here in Lexington. And the reason I say that captures my life, and we'll probably get deeper into it as we go through the interview, but I grew up in Eastern Kentucky as a minority in Eastern Kentucky and Appalachia. That was an experience in itself. To go to Eastern Kentucky University for undergrad and then transfer that into a 20-year college coaching career that predominantly happened at HBCUs in the Carolinas, it's almost like full circle, Paul.
Right.
Growing up in the environment I grew up in and then coming around coaching at HBCUs and now serving as a diversity specialist in a school district, and along with being a head boys basketball coach. So it's been an interesting ride, man, and we'll get into it. And why would someone want to listen? Because I feel like some of my story resonates with other people. I feel like I have a Gutter to Greatness story that I'm still on that journey.
We all are, brother.
I'm still on that journey, but when we get into it, man, you'll see that we got a lot of similarities, and there was a reason that you and I connected, I think almost a year ago at a teacher training in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. No, I definitely believe that everything is meant to be, and, nothing is a coincidence, and God always has a plan. And so I definitely can't wait to hear more of your story, get it out to the audience, because I know that you have accomplished so much. You've done a lot of wonderful things and helped a lot of kids, schools, and just the opportunity to have you on here is great. So I can't wait to get you just talking, man, and and really jumping in to where you started at. So where did Lil Murray started at? Where'd you grow up at? What it looked like, And, tell us a little bit more, because I think it was in Kentucky, right?
Yes, I grew up in a small eastern Kentucky town by the name of Pikeville, Kentucky. At the time, it was population around maybe about 3,500, 4,500 people. 4,557 of them were Caucasian, and just my immediate family was the only African American family in the area. At the time, there was there was other families, but there's not a lot of native African American families from, Pikeville per se. My family happened to be in the town for over 150 years.
Wow.
And it was a unique experience. It was mainly a positive experience for me. But as I get older, I can see, you only know what you know. And at the time growing up there, I didn't realize some of the, I guess, I'm not going to call it racism, but it was different, Paul. I got a lot of friends there, not trying to embarrass anyone, but it was hard being one of the few African Americans in a classroom. It was hard being an athlete, and that was kind of put on you as the expectation because I was tall, and you were just expected to be exceptional in sports. And there's a lot of young men that still deal with that today.
So, Brother Garvin, let's help people understand what Kentucky looks like in the landscape. So the landscape of things. Now, if you don't mind answering, what's your age now? How old are you?
Oh man, I'm at the right young age of 50 years old, bro.
Okay, so you're 50 now. So you were pretty much in the 70s. You were growing up in Kentucky, right after there was segregation ended, and civil rights were just changing, starting to materialize. There was some racism still going on. Well, there's still racism going on, but it was a little bit different. It was a little more antiquated back then. Just coming out of Jim Crow laws and some other things there. So what was it like in Southern Kentucky? Because when I think of, now I'm from New York, so I'm ignorant, right? So when I think of Kentucky, I think of, bluegrass, spitting in pails. I think of like they about to lynch you behind and hang you from a tree because you walking in the wrong diner or something in the 70s. So what was the feel? Because now if you're the only Black family in this town, I'm sure that there had to be some, awkward moments.
Well,
so
there was awkward moments. Kentucky's not quite the South, but it's not quite the North either. It kind of sits in the middle. So you have a lot of good people here. And you also dealt with at that time. My mother went to a segregated high school. Okay. Up until I think maybe her 9th grade year or something like that. Then she had to be bused to another high school. So I'm a generation removed from that. Just right. One generation. In fact, I grew up with a lot of white friends that were very close and near and dear to me, that sometimes my mom was just very uncertain about the relationship because of the experiences she had growing up. So it was different for me because I was also an athlete and very good at what I did, and I don't say that, I say that humbly, but you can see behind me here, I have 1,000-point basketball. If they made 1,000-yard footballs, I was 1,000-yard receiving as a wide receiver for our high school team, was able to capture 2 state championships and actually play for 3 in 4 years of high school.
That's tough to do.
Yeah, well, we were a powerhouse athletic team based in Eastern Kentucky. There was awkward moments, man. There was. I can't deny that. But there was also a lot of good people that I want to make sure that I highlight as well. And my experience, Paul, made it possible for me to work with a diverse group of people. It was actually something that I've chose to use to my advantage, because I grew up, I would rather know that you didn't like me than have to guess about it. So it was nothing to me to see a Confederate flag. That didn't throw me off. You know, I would much rather see the Confederate flag than you harbor something in your heart against me and not know. So
you know how they feel. You know what it is and
I know
that
what
means.
it is, and that allowed me to deal with, you know, just different people in different ways.
So when you were growing up, what was it like growing up? And so I understand being an athlete always becomes different relationships, certain privileges that come with having athletic gifts and talents. Say I wasn't as gifted. I was good, but I wasn't ever great. And so I didn't get a lot of privileges. Whatever I worked for, I kind of got the end little scraps afterwards. So I was, you know, and I played Division I football, but I was nobody's star. You know, I made it there by the skin of my teeth and through some hard work, and then got hurt and didn't finish playing. So I definitely understand, but I also know I wasn't that guy. You know, I was good, wasn't great. So what was it like growing up there? What were some of the things that you had to go through growing up?
Well, you know, growing up there and being an athlete and being good at what I set out to do on the athletic fields, it allowed opportunities that even some of my family members may not have received, because if they wasn't as athletically gifted. You know, I have an older sister that people still to this day call her my sister. You know, when she was older than me, she was much smarter than me academically, but she's always Murray's sister. You know, I had relatives that, again, because they wasn't as athletically gifted, I was taking on trips with families. You know, I had opportunities that other people in my family may not have received. And, you know, I would like to say it was due to the type of person I was, but I also know that it was my athletic gifts opened up opportunities. And, you know, not to get real biblical, but the Bible says that your gifts will make room for you. Right. And definitely some of the gifts that I had made room for me throughout my life. And a lot of it was earned as well. You know, some people say you're athletically gifted, but now being a coach, I realized that I rode my bike all day, so I had more endurance.
Right.
I created games and I played outside, so I became a leader. You know, so it wasn't necessarily gifts per se. It was things that I earned by being active. I used to watch all sports. I used to play all sports outside. We would go from playing wiffle ball to playing tackle football in the neighborhood. You know, so if you're doing that in your spare time, how much better are you going to be than the kid that only does it during practice?
No, I agree. And see, I had to be even more purposeful because I didn't have all the natural gifts. And I wasn't never terrible, obviously, if I played at a high level. But I was one of those that had to, like, I was the one who had to train extra. So I was the one who had to, when other kids were, you know, playing the games, I was training and going to camps and other things to try to hone my abilities to get from a 5.3 to a 4.7, you know, and at 4.7, I wasn't getting too much faster than that. Like it wasn't happening. But, you know, again, it was the hard work. And I definitely believe that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And so growing up, what was your family structure like? Did you have your mom, your dad? How many brothers, sisters? What would the household look like? You know, let us into your home a little bit.
Yeah, man. And this is no exaggeration, bro. But I grew up my first years. It was 15 of us in one house with one bathroom with no air conditioning.
Oh, good Lord. That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids. But it wasn't necessarily just my mother. It was my mom and my aunt's children. I had another aunt who died, and she had 5 children. And we all lived in my grandmother's house for a number of years. And we didn't even know we was poor, man. And I know that sounds cliche, like you really come up like that, but that was my formative years. You know, that it was myself. I have a sister named Felicia, Charlie, David, Sharon, Selena, Susan, Sally, and Sandra. We were all in one house.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot.
Look, listen to this, Paul, with one bathroom and no AC, bro. I don't even know how we did it.
Yeah.
I don't know how we did it. I remember lining up, and my Aunt Becky would give us laxatives once a week, to keep our bowels moving. I don't know how we came through it, man, but it taught me so much. It made me so appreciative that I didn't get really my
Did you pee outside a lot, bro?
Yeah, we had chickens. I mean, it was.
You just peed outside a lot. That's what it was. That's how you got through it.
Yeah. Peed outside a lot, man. We had chickens.
I don't know how your sisters got through it because it probably wasn't as easy for them to pee outside.
I don't know, but I believe that era of family
was built different. Yeah,
was built different than today.
I definitely agree with that. I think the family structure and family values were a little more traditional. And even though y'all all were living in a very close, tight-knit quarters, there was a different type of bond that was probably going. The values were different. And so I know that over the years, a lot of our society has gotten away from those values and gotten away from that close-knit family and those bonds. And I definitely feel like we're suffering as a society because of it, and definitely suffering as Black families because of it. Now, what was up with Dad? Was Dad around? Was he in the picture? Was he not in the picture?
Hey, man, my dad was a Rolling Stone, Paul. I didn't reconnect with him. Now, get this. I'm 6'4". My mom is lucky to be 5'2" when she was living. And I'm dark-skinned. My mom is very fair-skinned. And my dad wasn't around. I am a junior. He and I did not reconnect until I was about 22 years old. I reconnected with him. This is before the internet, man. My girlfriend, that is now my wife at the time, we found his name in the phone books.
Oh, really?
Yes. Looked up. My mother knew that he was from South Carolina. They had divorced. They married and divorced in the 70s. She lived in Springfield, Massachusetts, working at a plant. They met up there. She wanted to come back to Kentucky. He wasn't coming to Kentucky. They split up, had zero contact. So I'm growing up being the child that most men I figured would want.
Right.
Without my father in the stands. I was telling someone just the other day that I used to play, gets me emotional thinking about it. I used to play athletic events visualizing my father sitting in the gym.
Yeah, I concur because my father wasn't around either, and my mother was going through depression and some other issues, and so I would have no one come into my games either. And I used to remember picturing or wishing that they were there to support me, or when other people's family was there, and never had that experience. So I definitely, I also understand that.
Yeah. See, my mother made it to every game. She was my biggest fan and my toughest critic, but still as a young man, you desire for your father to be around. And I remember playing games, man. And this is why the movie, The Water Boy, resonated with me. You remember how he used to see the enemy or, someone he was mad at and the opponent? Right. Hell, I used to do it and I didn't think it would be a movie.
Right.
I used to hoop, be like, man, you should be here. I'm out here giving these guys buckets. I'm scoring touchdowns and he's not around. I used to be like, man, you really missed out, man, because I really showed my butt tonight. You should be here. I used to have this conversation in my head. And it was motivation for me to be who I strive to be out there on the athletic field. Now, it wasn't the same for me in the classroom now. I was not a stellar student, and if it wasn't for athletics, I don't know if I would have graduated high school. That was my motivation.
But I think the key point of something that you just said that I think that was really crucial, and what he just said is that he used it as motivation. So instead of backing down and running away from it and feeling sorry for himself and giving up, he used it as motivation, and through motivation, he was able to persevere and do some other things. So I think that's really what is crucial there for me. And the classroom as Black men, that's always a problem that I think that we need to converse about. And that mentally, so we become very physically tough, but mentally we often take a back seat, and that's all mental. Like the classroom is mental, and those are things that we need more of us and more of our Black fathers to be pushing to do classroom things, to do mental toughness, and just in general, man. I had a conversation, and I'd love to hear your take on this. I had a conversation with my fiance the other day. We were talking about a relative, and I won't put them out there, but they a relative who has his stepson, and his stepson is lives in the same house, not athletic, right? And he doesn't take a lot of interest in him in a lot of different ways. Like even on Father's Day, he posted his biological kids, but he didn't put his stepson in the picture, and so my argument was, or not argument, but conversation was that if his stepson would have been athletic and a star athlete, that I would argue that he probably would have posted him too, and they would have a better connection. But since he's not athletic and he's interested in other things, the brother doesn't seem to always make connections with him when he's missing out on an opportunity to connect to a really dope young man. And so, I just always think about us as Black men and how do we support the youth and how do we support better or differently. And, what's your take on all of that?
Well, I think as Black men, and actually the role that I serve here in the school district is I monitor programming for what they call BIPOC males, which is Black, Indigenous people of color. And I do a lot of initiatives for young Black males in our school district. The number one thing is we have to celebrate academic achievement as much as we celebrate touchdowns and 3-pointers. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And I told them that's an oxymoron coming from a coach and someone who's had a career in athletics. But the sooner we realize that in our communities, that athletics is not going to feed the majority of our young men.
No.
And it has to
98% is not.
Right. It has to be looked at as a tool to build good habits to become a creator, a owner, a CEO, a team player. Someone that understands arriving early and leaving late, someone that understands that you have to study your opponent in order to beat your opponent, not only on the playing fields, but also in the marketplace and in business. All of these characteristics can transfer over, but if we're only talking about touchdowns and 3-pointers, we're missing really what athletics can do for a young man. And some of the things that we're on here talking about, and the reason you and I are conversating, is because of what we learned through athletics.
Right.
But
athletics became my father. And where I didn't have a career that, and I've done things like I started off as a phys ed teacher, and I played Division I football. I've coached basketball. I've coached women's pro football. So and so I've had aspects of a career, but I haven't really made a lucrative money off of it, or haven't had a longevity of a career in athletics. But the lessons, like you stated, that it provided for me were so much more valuable, and learned all about perseverance and learned all about how to go over, around, under, through things, rather than giving weight to it and taking that same mentality to life. And so it definitely helped change my life, and it replaced that male figure that I didn't have.
Right. The same thing, man. A coach was the most impactful person in my life. I get asked that question a lot growing up without my father around, who was the most impactful person? And it was one of my coaches. My high school coach is someone I just spoke to the other day. He was at my first game when I was a college head coach. He came to that. He's been a constant in my life, all of my life. And that is why I turned to coaching. I wanted to do the same for young men that fall under my tutelage. I want to be someone that they can rely on, that will be consistent in their life, not just for what they're doing for me at the moment, but be consistent throughout their life, and be a resource for them.
No, absolutely. Now, what would you say was the most challenging struggle you had growing up? Tell us a story about that.
Well, the most challenging struggle is exactly what we're talking about. Growing up without my father around, man, really damaged me as a young man. I was always seeking approval from people. I was being a people pleaser, and sometimes that got me in trouble. A crossroads moment I'll never forget. I used to have a really bad temper when I was young. I'll never forget this moment. I've shared this moment in several speaking engagements. But I got into an altercation at football practice one day, and I stepped on a teammate's neck with cleats on.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
With cleats on. I stepped on his neck. Now, I wasn't yet the star. I had star potential, but I'll never forget this moment. Well, when I got into this altercation, man, my coach, Paul, formed me in the chest and he hemmed me up against the fence.
Right.
And he told me, and I'll never forget this, this has almost been 45 years ago and it still resonates in my life like it was yesterday. He said, Murray, with that temper, you'll be in prison by the time you're 18. And I'll never, that encounter like woke me up. I was probably about 15 years old then.
Right.
So by the time you're 18, you're going to be in prison if you don't lose that temper, man. You're going beyond fighting. You're trying to really hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, about 20 years later, I was voted into my high school Hall of Fame, and I shared that story in my induction speech.
Right.
That actually saved my life, that encounter. And the coach who said that to me, his name is Coach Bill Alera. He's in the back of the auditorium during my speech, and he's in tears. I mean, he's crying. And he comes up to me after I finished, and he told me that he was sorry. And I said, no, coach. No, don't be sorry, man. You saved my life. Because I'm happy to tell you that I've never seen the back of a cop car.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been in any type of trouble. And if you didn't check me that day, the way he checked me, there's no telling where I would be right now.
Absolutely. And mine was Coach Trent Jackson, and he was the Bruz, right? And this was before I even knew, what the Bruz were, right? Mm-hmm. And so he also helped save me, but a little differently. I was getting ready to quit on myself, and I was getting ready to quit to the point where I was just going to be done my senior year playing football and lose any opportunities or anything because I thought someone else didn't like me or the other coach didn't care for me and wasn't giving me the time. And when I would he asked me, he stopped to talk to me, first of all, because he could have just let me walk out and turn my stuff in. He stopped and talked to me and asked me, why was I quitting? And then when I told him, you know what, he told me, and I'll keep it the PG version that he said, but he said, you stupid mother effer. Yeah. And that's how he talked to you. He had a real gruff voice. You stupid, dumb mother. But then he went into loving words too. It wasn't, and I know it sounds like an oxymoron. There'll be people that don't understand it, but he had this real, even though he was gruff and caring, he would cuss you out, but he did it with love. And then he went into what I wasn't doing. And he said, if you can tell me honestly that you're doing this, that you're biting down on your mouthpiece, and every time you get in there, you're outworking everybody, and you're running the competition over every time, and you're giving 100%, and you're doing all this and doing that, and you're not, and that's why you're not playing, then you got a point. But you can't say that because you'd be taking plays off. You'd be doing this, you'd be doing that. And I had to go home and look in the mirror. And when I looked in the mirror, I was like, yeah, coach, he's right. It wasn't him. It was me. And I came back the next day and I did exactly what this man said, but it became a metaphor for life. So biting down on my mouthpiece and running somebody over became a metaphor for my life. And I did that. And I played it, I think, every down after that because I started working differently. And so what I realized was I might not be the smartest guy in the room, but I can outwork people. And I can outwork people. And without him taking that time to invest in me, because he could have let me just go. He could have let me go and walk off and not care that I was about to throw away really some life lessons that I needed. And he didn't let me do that. And, I got to take him home one day after a barbecue that we had as Omegas. And, not only was he my coach, but now he's my fraternity brother. And I was able to talk to him and thank him. And, he just kind of gave me a shrug like, that's what I was supposed to do, But it was definitely something where a coach helped change my life as well.
Right.
Now, when you when you were going through this and you had this anger and you had these emotions, what were you taught on how to deal with your emotions? And what did you do with your emotions generally? Because it sounds like you were very angry because your father wasn't around.
Yeah. Man, I didn't understand it until I actually met my father and met one of my uncles, man. Listen to this. This is crazy. So when I was young, when I got angry, I would cry. I would cry in anger. And I would cry when I was happy. I was a very emotional kid. I still am emotional. And I didn't know where it came from. You know, hell, I would cry watching Free Willy or a Disney movie. And then I was just an emotional guy. Or if I got really angry, I would start crying. And it wasn't until I reconnected with my father's side of the family and I met one of my uncles. It was my Uncle Gerald, and it was one of my father's brothers. And he cried all the time. He would cry when he saw you. He would cry when you leave.
Genetic.
He would cry when he's talking about his family. And I'm sitting there, Paul, and I start crying because it was the answer to my test.
Right.
You know, some of the things we have are inherited, and because we don't know the other side of our family, some of our actions, man, as a kid, I was ashamed of that. Mm-hmm. I was ashamed that I would cry when I got angry because I thought crying was a sign of weakness, when actually vulnerability is a sign of strength.
Absolutely.
I even tell guys I coach now that, hey, I may shed a tear, but you can't whoop me.
Right.
You know, I may get upset and cry, or I may be happy and cry, but ain't nobody going to run up on me. But that's the way I used to defend it when I was young.
Right.
And just imagine the young men that don't know the other side of their families, and they go through experiences. Hell, I even used to stutter when I was a kid. Well, I didn't know where that came from until I met my father's side of the family. And half of the men in the family, they stuttered. And I have cousins who stuttered that never got help. And here I am doing national TV, and I'm doing interviews because I was in a position to get help when I was a kid. And I had a speech therapist from probably K through 8th grade until it got uncool for Miss Childress to come pull me out of class to go say, Sally sells seashores down by the shore.
Right.
I had to practice saying that, man. Sally sells seashell. I still can't say it. Hell.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
I'm saying that everything happened intentionally for me in my life. And the point that I'm getting at is we as men, as educators, we have to see our young men and go back and tell them, if I can, you can story. If you can go from gutter to greatness, I can go from gutter to greatness. You can too. You know.
And I think it's so important to reach back and do that and give back at all levels. And it's so true. Like, I still have a little stutter, I think, and I have to talk with my hands so I don't to help me process it, so I don't stutter. It's just crazy. But even about the crying part, see, I was taught I couldn't cry, and I held it all in, and then it would come out in other ways. And so there's all kinds of things that we were taught and didn't have by having the right role models. And so now the opportunity is to give back and be the role models that we always needed and wanted, and then trying to get others to do that as well. You know, thinking about role models, though, so I think coaches are definitely role models. But I got a trending topic to talk about real quick. So we're going to switch for a little minute. We're going to come back to our conversation. So trending topic, right? And so I like to talk about trending topics and just get your perspective. And I brought this one up because you're a coach yourself. So JJ Redick, who was a pretty decent player, good shooter, right? Overall was a good player. Wasn't one of the greats, but he's still a good player. I think, you know, he probably understands strategy. He probably understands a lot. And he recently was named the Lakers' new head coach. And the only team he's ever actually coached before was Biddy Ball, I think his kid's 4th grade team. And so he has no coaching experience. He has NBA playing experience, but no coaching experience. So some people are really upset because there's some more experienced people out there that this could have went to, like, i.e., I think Sam Cassell, who has been, has a larger NBA resume, but also has some assistant coaching experience. And again, I'll give my perspective in a minute, but what's your take on this as someone who has been a coach at collegiate levels and at high school levels? What's your take on this?
Well, my take may be different than a lot of people because I prescribe to the potion. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. And right. JJ has set himself up to be in this position by being an analyst, by conducting a podcast, by playing. People underestimate the phone call that Coach K can make. Okay, right. And the influence that an endorsement from Coach K has in the industry of basketball. There's a couple of people that if you get a phone call from Coach K, you get an endorsement from Jerry Colangelo, you get an endorsement from, maybe other coaches that he's played for, but most importantly, Coach Mike Krzyzewski, that's going to open doors. Right. AJ has also lived a somewhat clean-cut life. Okay, he was a high school All-American, a McDonald's All-American. I believe he won a national championship at Duke. He hasn't had any issues off the floor that has tarnished his reputation. When he talks on ESPN, he does it from a basketball perspective and not from a talking head perspective. He's very matter of fact. His demeanor, his jawline, his skin tone. There is a such thing as privilege in this country. Yeah. And if you're using the privilege to help others, I don't have an issue with it. It's when you cut other people's throats that it really resonates with me as a problem, or you act like it's not real. There is privilege in America. He's capitalized on that privilege, but who am I to say that he hadn't earned the right to coach one of the most known franchises in all of sports and becoming the head coach of the Lakers after coaching a 4th and 5th grade team? That doesn't happen for everybody. We all know it doesn't happen for everyone. Those opportunities aren't extended usually to people of color, and more power to him. Let's see what he does.
Absolutely. My take is that if it's meant for you, that no man can take it away, right? And so God must have a plan, and this must be an opportunity that's meant for him. This must not have been meant for Sam Cassell. So as much as there's other factors and there is privilege and other pieces involved, I agree with you that this gentleman has done the work. He obviously has the right experience that they're looking for. And could there have been a better choice? Maybe, maybe not. But at the same time, you know what? God must want this brother to have this opportunity and has created this for him. And we can't take that away. And who are we to judge whether it's the right opportunity for him or not? Because one day you're going to hope or wish that you were placed into an opportunity, or I was placed in an opportunity with or without all of the extra pieces that we may have had. And who knows? If it's the right opportunity, that's what God wants for us. I'm sure it'll happen. So
keep this in mind. It all happens on levels too. JJ has operated at the highest level of basketball for most of his career. Okay. I've come out of college coaching, and since I've left college coaching, I've had 2 pretty prestigious high school jobs. And some people would say, why does he deserve to have these high school jobs when there's been guys in the area that's been assistant coaches for years that hadn't had the opportunity to lead one program, and I've had 2. So it's all relative to what level that you're competing at and the level of the arena that you're in. So I get it. I also understand clicks and likes and the power of social media. Some people say things that are controversial just to get clicks and likes. And right now that's running our society, is how many clicks and likes you can get. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I'm a Lakers guy. If I could turn this camera around, I got a picture of Kobe Bryant on my wall here. Purple and gold is the foundation of who we are as Omega men. So the purple and gold has always been something that I followed. I'm just looking to see, let's see what happens, man. If LeBron doesn't move on from being the face of the franchise, we're going to still be the 10th seed. It don't matter who they have as the coach. They got to get better players and better schematics on what they're trying to do on the floor. And hopefully JJ can bring that to the Lakers. Hey, Pat Riley, at least he had some experience, but you look at the demeanor of JJ Redick, he looks like a young Pat Riley.
That's true. Pat Riley did it. He was calling a lot of shots behind the scenes before he had his moment. But no, he does, and he favors that. And just thinking about your coaching career, and so I know you went to high school. You had a lot of success. Now, where'd you play at in college when you shifted out of high school?
Yeah, man. Listen to this, Paul. Oh, boy. I went to Eastern Kentucky University. At the time, it was called Prop 48. I had the test score, but I did not have the GPA. Yeah.
Yep. And see, I had the GPA, and I didn't have the test score.
Yeah.
I couldn't pass the SAT to save my life.
I can still take tests to this day, but as far as sitting still for 90 minutes in a class, that was just something that wasn't for me. So I struggled academically. Which was weird. I go out and I knock out I think I had a 21 on the ACT.
That's good.
It was okay. That's an okay score. It's not bad.
It's a very good score, yes.
Yeah. But I had like a 2.2 GPA. I was more interested in chasing girls than I was chasing, equations.
And I was chasing the girls, and I would keep like a 3.5 GPA, but then my test scores were, I couldn't even, the first time I took the SATs, I think I got a 700 or 710, and they said I needed a 720 to be able to be eligible to play Division I football. And so I had to go take it again. And I think I got like a 721 or something. So I just got it higher, which was, you get 300 some points for signing your name. So I struggled with the test, my friend.
Right. So I go to EKU as a Prop 48, man, and I have to sit out the first year. I played spring the next year, play spring ball the next year. I had to take an algebra class that summer to get my 24 for the year. And Paul, I failed the algebra class. Man. I was so talented, man. They still kept me around. I still worked out with the team. My second year, played in the spring game again. Played in the spring football game again, got to my meeting with the head coach that spring. I asked him for some scholarship money. He said I didn't have any scholarship money. My ego was bruised because guys I came in with, now they know the playbook, they know the audibles. I had no game experience. When he told me he had no scholarship money for me, I hung up my football, man. I stopped playing. And that was another crossroads moment in my life because athletics had become my identity. And my own mother asked me, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? And I'll never forget that spring, she actually bought me my first car while I was in college. Her and my sister went in and got me a Chevy Cavalier, man.
A Chevy what?
Chevy Cavalier.
Okay, I remember the little Cavaliers. My first car was the OJ Ford Bronco. I had a red OJ Ford Bronco that fell apart every 2 days.
Yeah, they bought me a Chevy Cavalier, man, and I'll never forget my mom.
You're too big for a Chevy Cavalier.
Yeah, she said I would have never bought you this car if I'd have known you were quitting.
Right.
And it was just like, Mom, I'm more than an athlete. See, now I done got some knowledge of self, man, being at college. One of my mentors, which become like a brother to me, he done gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X. So now I'm learning who I am outside of ball. I'm reading some Paul Robeson. My mind's expanding. I'm learning, what was it? I'll never forget the first time I heard Lift Every Voice and Sing, right? Remember, I'm from Eastern Kentucky. I'm at my first Divine Nine step show. And they stand up and they sing Lift Every Voice and Sing. And I start looking around wondering why all these black people know the words to this song. And I've never heard this song before. And here I am at the step show crying, bro.
Right.
Because I never heard this song. And
it's an emotional song.
Yeah, but no, not because the emotion of the song, because I never heard it before.
Okay.
I never heard the song before, and all my people are singing this song, and I've never even heard it. I told you, growing up in Eastern Kentucky, man, the only blackness I got was through MTV. My cousins used to record the radio and send it to me. My family in North Carolina used to record BET on a VHS tape and bring it to me when they came home during the summer, or they come to see my grandparents. That was the only way I got any black culture. So I never heard Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Right.
So I'm going through all this, man. And my mother says, what are you going to do? And I'll never forget. It was motivation. I told my mom, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to graduate. That's what I'm going to do. I'm more than a ball player, Mom.
That's good.
And it was something that was, like I said, a crossroads moment for me, because I wanted to prove to her that I would graduate. And a long story short, this is Gutter to Greatness right here. Absolutely. The day I graduated, bro, my graduation date was December 12th, 1998. Okay. My father, who I reconnected with, his funeral was on the day of my graduation.
Oh, wow.
In South Carolina. I chose to go to my father's funeral, and it changed my life for the rest of my life.
Was it healing for you?
Say it again.
Was it healing for you?
Absolutely.
Your father's funeral was healing for you, and how did that healing look? How did it look? What did it feel like?
Oh man, so it was off an Oprah Winfrey movie, man. I show up at the family home. Many of my family on my father's side never knew about me. You know, I have two older sisters that he basically raised that did not believe that their dad had another child that he never spoke about. So imagine showing up at the funeral and you look just like the man. Okay.
Right.
Down to my teeth
You were doing double takes.
Yeah, down to my eyebrows. Everything looked like my father, and the whole family standing around and looking. And then you go to a church where it's packed, okay, and people are mourning your father and your namesake. I mean, who I'm named after. I'm a junior, and I never knew the man like that. So it reconnected me, like I said, with the other side of my family. It introduced me to sisters that I didn't know, to cousins. It was the reason that I moved to South Carolina years later. I met a cousin that became a brother to me because he respected that I came to my father's funeral. And Gerald and I formed a relationship that's really unbreakable. You know, if I didn't go to his funeral. And I moved to the Carolinas, and it started my journey in college coaching just because I stepped out on faith and relocated and basically walked into my blessing.
Right. Now, what schools did you coach at? So if you want to give the coaching resume here.
Yeah, I started off at a small junior college called Clinton Junior College in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It was a 2-year school at the time. It's now a 4-year school. It was a historically Black 2-year college. Right there in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I went from Clinton Junior College to Charleston Southern University as an assistant coach. I went from Charleston Southern University to Winston-Salem State as an assistant coach. I was there for, it seemed like each stop was about 3 years. And then I went from Winston-Salem State to South Carolina State as an assistant coach. I was there 1 year. I became the interim head coach, okay, with 7 games left in the season. And I turned that into a 10-year stint as the head coach at South Carolina State. And then 3 years ago, right at the conclusion of COVID, my contract wasn't renewed. I was let go at South Carolina State, relocated back to Kentucky, where I was born and raised at, and served as a high school basketball coach at a school called Paul Lawrence Dunbar. I was there for 2 years and became the athletic director there. And now I'm at a school named Frederick Douglass. It seems like I'm always at historically Black named schools.
Well, it must be for a reason. Now, what I want to know is, okay, so you got that interim position with 7 games left. What was going through your mind when you had to go from the assistant, when you had to go from the Indian to the chief, and what went through your mind, and what was that process like? What was that thought process?
Oh, it was gut wrenching, to be honest with you. Now I'm gonna tell you something else. I was also online. I was in process with the frat when
Okay,
that
so that's
transition happened.
a whole nother experience.
A whole nother experience. But listen to this: the DR come and asked me, did I want to drop? Because he was like, Coach, you got an opportunity of a lifetime. We understand if you want to drop line, and we'll pick you up next spring or whenever
Right.
we pick another line. I said, absolutely not. This is actually my escape. Coming to
Right.
some sessions, that got my mind off the pressures of,
A whole other pressures.
yeah. But the helmet's closed right now, bro.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, but it was an escape, to say the least, going in and going through that process. But from going from the assistant to the head coach, it was hard because the guy I was working for is still a mentor and a friend to me today. We often talk about that transition. He really stated that he was kind of burned out. It was year 30 for him in coaching, and it was his first experience at a HBCU, and he just felt like year after year they were taken away, but the expectations were still there, and he kind of got frustrated and just it was time for a change. Listen to this, and I'm gonna give you the short story. My first home game was against a legendary coach that had won 5 conference championships at South Carolina State. And now he was the head coach at North Carolina A&T. It was his first time coming back to South Carolina State for a game as a head coach of a rival school, and we won that game. I believe that's what got me the job.
I believe it.
Yeah, we beat. I call him. He's still the mayor of Orangeburg. That's the name of the town where South Carolina State is in. Coach Cy Alexander is very well respected. I think right now he's actually coaching HBCU All-Star team that's playing in Paris right now. He's won probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 conference championships, been to the NCAA tournament. Very well respected coach. But his first visit back to Orangeburg, we were able to
put that whooping on him. That's good stuff. Now, because we go through our ups and downs, even when we shift from our gutter to our greatness, right? Like you said, I heard you clearly say that they didn't renew you after 10 years. So after you gave 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears and really helped this program, what was that experience like?
Oh, man, it sent me in a spiral, to be honest with you, man. I believe that some things you can see me squirm, man. I don't like talking about because
that's my goal, is to make people uncomfortable, though. I like you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable here on the Gut of the Greatness.
Right. But I'm gonna go ahead and give it to you, man.
Yeah.
I went through a spell of depression.
That's real.
Because you go through. I'm a Division I head coach now. Like you said, I gave my skin off my back for that town and for that university. We didn't have a lot of success in the win column, but there were other components. The reason we weren't successful on the court, that I don't have to get into that.
No, not asking.
Our kids graduated. We won national awards for some of the things we were doing in the community there.
You were building good people.
Yeah. We did things the right way, man. And to be told that you're no longer wanted somewhere.
Right.
I don't know about you, but being who I am, I hadn't been rejected too many times in my life.
Right.
And when someone tells you they no longer want you there, it's just a feeling of you feel ashamed. You feel that you must not be good at what you do. Right. Your family goes through it. You can't go anywhere because everybody's asking, Coach, they did you wrong, or what are you going to do next? You live in a fishbowl when you're on that platform.
Right.
And it was really hard. And then
I definitely believe that.
Plus you make a really good income. You know what I mean? I mean, to make well over 6 figures and only have a bachelor's degree, man, that's pretty uncommon in life outside of athletics on
Right.
the Division I level. So you go from that to nothing,
Well,
and
it's tough. But God had a bigger plan for your life.
he
There
had
was
a
something
plan.
he removed that so that you could see what was next, because there was other stuff that I'm sure he wanted you to do and other ways to help. And so as we start to come to a close in about 60 seconds or less, because I think you've dropped a lot of gems, and just even revealing that, I think people need to hear that, because even though you might climb, you're still going to go through things, but it's always the bounce back. It's always how you come back. It's always how you pull through. If there were 3 things or 3 keys that you would give somebody to move from their gutter to greatness, what would those 3 keys be?
I keep this on my desk, Paul. It's cotton.
Oh,
Yeah, it's cotton that I picked when I lived in South Carolina. I lived close to a cotton field, and I went out and I picked some, and I keep it with me. And what I would tell people to realize is we've never had really a hard day if you're in this generation, man. And don't let 15 minutes determine a hard day. Imagine you got to pick 25 pounds or 12 pounds of cotton before you come in at night, and you got to pull the seed out before the machine. So I tell people, man, that we really hadn't had a hard day, man. We went from the cotton fields to the White House, to being responsible fathers, to husbands, to CEOs, to running schools, to being bankers, to being in business, to engineers. We've done all this stuff in spite of all the obstacles that's been put in front of us. Okay? You and I are on this platform talking right now when we couldn't talk this way in public. Just a little under 60 years ago, we couldn't have this conversation. So I would tell young people, man, just to keep persevering, to keep pushing, to gravitate to someone that looks like them, that's been able to overcome the obstacles in their life, and don't let no one determine your success. I feel like I'm a successful man, and I don't live in a 4-story home. I got more than I need. I got a roof over my head. I got food in the refrigerator. My kids are prosperous. My wife is beautiful. Everything's good in my life, man. Right. In spite of some of the obstacles that I've shared with you in this short interview, it's possible. It's possible.
No, absolutely. So I want to thank our guest, our illustrious guest, Coach Murray Garvin. He definitely came on and dropped some gems today. And at the end of the day, we always talk about a mindfulness minute. And I really believe that the mindfulness here, again, is the bounce back and understanding. And I think the biggest thing that I heard this brother share is that he had reached really high levels of success. And then he had something not go the way that he wished that it would have went. And for whatever reason, but he didn't allow that to break him. He didn't allow that for him to quit. He kept going and he bounced back. He's now a coach at one of the most successful high schools in Kentucky. He also has a great position helping and supporting diversity in a school district that I'm sure needs him. And he's doing a lot for kids. He's doing a lot for educators, doing a lot for his community. And he has a great family and is happy. So the bounce back, he could have let it break him, but instead of letting him break him, he let it make him. And so he realized what's important and what his priorities are. And as you go through your day, realize what's important and what your priorities are. Realize that there's nothing that you can't get through. Even when it seems impossible, the possible is always possible. There is no such thing as impossible when you're trying to work towards moving from your gutter to greatness. And so I really want to thank everybody for tuning in today and continue to be greater later. This is another episode from the gutter to greatness. Until next time, be greater later.
That's it for today's episode. So